Hey everybody, good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Tyngsborough TV Live. I am, of course, Town Media Director Steve Brogan, and I've got a special broadcast for you this afternoon. It is Substance Abuse Awareness Month, and working with our Board of Health and Maria Ruggiero, who is working through a program called SAPSI, I believe it is, right?
Yep.
We've decided to do a couple of broadcasts where we're going to talk about some of the various aspects of Substance Abuse Awareness Month in order to raise awareness of all of the various things that are available to folks with regard to substance abuse, because there's obviously a lot of different aspects to this. It's not just one or the other. There's so many different aspects to it that touch people's lives in many ways. So they've decided to come on and they wanted to talk about it. So we're going to basically have a nice chat and talk about some of the various aspects of Substance Abuse Awareness Month. So let's start it off with this. Maria, I want to first introduce you. So you work with work for or with SAPSI, right?
Correct. So SAPSI stands for Substance Abuse Prevention Collaborative.
Okay. And so what exactly does that do?
Well, I'm based out of Tewksbury. I'm a civilian based out of the Tewksbury Police Department.
Okay.
And we concentrate specifically on underage drinking and other drug use within our youth.
Okay.
So the collaborative is the surrounding community. So it's Billerica, Chelmsford, Dracut, Lowell, of course, Tewksbury, Tyngsborough, which just came on board, Westford and Wilmington, and I think I've gotten them all. And so we concentrate on underage drinking and other drug use, and we work with Mike Hall out of the Lowell Health Department on his initiative, which is MOPSI, and that's the Massachusetts Opiate Abuse Prevention Collaborative, and he concentrates on opiates.
Okay.
So we kind of work the region together because the drugs, we have to cover all boundaries. We have to cover all aspects.
Well, like I said, there's so many different aspects.
Yep.
So, and also joining us in studio is David Hanley, who's come on to talk about his project that you're working on. It's a sober house, from what I understand.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Tell me just briefly a little bit about yourself in the sober house.
Well, the program I'm with is called Into Action Recovery.
Okay.
And we've been around for a few years, and we finally opened a sober house in Tewksbury.
Okay.
Known as Fox Run Sober Living. It's a sober living home for men, residential, long-term, structured care for men with substance abuse or alcohol problems. Okay.
Excellent. So let's bring it back to you, Maria, and we'll start off with build a little more on what you just told us about SAPSI. So what is your main goal, I guess? Let's say, obviously, you said substance abuse, but drinking, underage drinking, correct?
Yep. And it's basically within our youth. So, and it's underage drinking and other drug use.
Okay.
Because of the way the brain develops, and that could be a whole show on itself.
Yeah. Right.
The younger somebody starts using a substance, the harder it is for them not to become addicted, or the easier it is for them to create that pathway.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is cover, like you said, all aspects. We are trying to get education into the schools, which, by the way, Tyngsborough has been amazing. They came on later. We've been probably around now about 3 years. Tyngsborough literally just came on within 6 months. We're already working with the schools. We're working with Donna McParlin. Am I saying that right, Donna? We're working with Donna at the Board of Health. They have just jumped on board, which is wonderful. And we're just trying to find different ways to give kids coping skills at a younger age and as an older age, and also to give them the education as to why they should at the very least, hold off on drinking alcohol.
Right, because it's definitely a clear problem, the underage drinking, right?
Yep.
And just having a drinking age rather, isn't necessarily the key, because they'll find some other way to get it. Let me just really quickly, I forgot to mention at the beginning, so you can watch this broadcast on Facebook, on YouTube. If you're watching on either of those places, you can also chime in and ask questions if you have one for Maria or David. Feel free. And you can also watch us at Tyngsborough.ma.gov on our live video on demand and streaming service, as well as on Comcast Channel 8 and Verizon Channel 29 here in Tyngsborough. So you can watch it a bunch of different ways. And like I said, you can feel free to chime in and ask questions if you have any. So what are some of the ways that you've found in order to help either limit or prevent underage drinking, or are you past that? Is it not even an option? You just basically try to deal with the kids that have already been.
Well, when you work in prevention, it's really hard because you really don't always see the end result, because anything like that's going to take a period of time before you actually see the result. So working with the coping skills with the school in the schools has been wonderful. So we'll see that hopefully down the road once we get the prevention into the schools.
How do these kids end up coming to you? Are they referred to you? Do you find them out? You find them yourself, or is it like law enforcement that tells you about these, or parents?
Well, we have a couple of different things, but the prevention under SAPSI is we go into the schools. We have a coalition with at
Okay,
least
gotcha.
one member of each community I just mentioned on board.
Mhm.
Every community is in a different area. Again, Tyngsborough jumped right on board. So we have a member for each one, and we meet. We decide where their community is, where they're on, where the capacity or the readiness is, and we work within that community. So, for example, Tyngsborough is ready. We're in the schools. One of our other communities, Westford, is also implementing, and we're in conversations with the other schools.
Okay.
We do have a particular program in Lowell. We work with the Lowell Teen Block, and it's a specific group of kids that we provide education to, but they become our leaders. They become our peer leaders.
Okay.
And hopefully the game plan would be for them to go into other schools and go into the younger kids and educate them in some manner. So,
Gotcha.
we have certain strategies that we present to each community, and when that community is ready, then that's what we do.
Is there any data on whether or not the prevention, how well the prevention works or how effective it is?
Yes, and we work specifically with life skills, so I think that's going to be our last show.
Okay.
And I'll make sure I come along with the data.
Okay. Excellent. That'd be
The
good.
one thing I do want to add is September is National Recovery Month, and October is National Substance Abuse Month. The reason why we decided as a group to ask David here first is because we wanted to start off on a positive note. Because when you're talking about substance abuse and you're talking about addiction, if a family is in the throes of that addiction, it can be very hopeless. I mean, you just feel that way. So we wanted to start it off with a positive note because people do recover. There is a reason people do recover, and they do become happy and healthy. And then the next 3 or 4 will be specific drug specific.
Okay. So now let's rope David into this. So maybe you can tell us a little more about Sober House. So maybe tell us just a little bit about what really drove you to want to get involved with this whole process. Because clearly this isn't something that either it's a passion, like when you're young you want to be a substance abuse counselor or something like that, or something has happened to you in your life that's kind of driven you towards this direction. So what was it for you?
Well, it was a little of both.
Okay.
I have my own recovery story. I'm in long-term recovery myself. I was a kid that got into drugs at a young age and had quite a time to get off them. But eventually, I got to the point where I did kick it myself.
Okay.
And part of my recovery plan was working with other addicts and alcoholics, trying to help them.
Just get right up onto the mic for me. There you go.
Yeah, you go. Trying to help them, acquire the same skills that I did and try to bring them up where they can get recovered too. And so I started doing that right off the bat, and then a few years down the road, I got involved with this group into Action Recovery. It was a collaborative of people from all walks of life that were all experiencing problems, not personally, but within their families and their group of peers. And along that way, my brother also had his own struggles and ended up losing his life to disease.
Oh, boy.
And that really threw a lot of gas on it for us.
I'm sure, yeah, it sounds like that.
That really motivated us to really do what we're doing now, and we opened a home. Because, truth be told, my brother passed away on a waiting list for a sober bed.
Really?
Yeah, it just goes to show how tight the numbers are. There's so many. The demand is so high, and there's just not enough beds to meet the demand right now. So that's what we try to do. We're trying to fill that void, and we're using his passing as a motivation for our whole group.
So from experience, you saw a need, and a devastating one at that. So you decide you're basically at that point where you can help.
Yeah.
You just want to provide spaces.
Yeah, it's like it's such a problem out there right now that there's not a lot of there are more and more resources, but there's never enough. So anything I can do to try to help is key.
Excellent.
Anything anybody can try to do.
Yeah. Now, how is the Sober House funded?
Well, grassroots funding, and we raise money. We have fundraisers that we have 2 or 3 a year. Plus donations. We have a golf tournament. Okay. We have a 5K road race.
Oh, nice. Okay, good.
We have a GoFundMe, but also Representative Maselli, who passed not long ago, was one of our biggest champions and helped us acquire some money from the state.
That's excellent.
In the form of a grant, which was terrific, and that's how we got going.
Have you talked with anyone else that's going to be potentially taking his role in order to maybe see if they'll take the reins and be a listening ear, I guess?
Politically, you mean?
Yeah, politically.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave Robertson is the Democratic nominee for that seat. He's been a great advocate for us. We worked with him for a long time because he was at all our meetings with Representative Maselli, so he's really helped us out. And Dave Nagel in Lowell has been terrific too.
Oh,
He's
good.
been
That's excellent. Yeah.
a great supporter of the recovery community and what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's been terrific.
The reason why I asked that is because the state can obviously be great in helping to get grant monies and things, but they're also big champions of just letting other legislators know that this thing is happening. So it's kind of nice to have that sort of promotion, kind of grassroots promotion, basically. You're not even having to do it; they're doing it for you, which is always nice. So it's very commendable to know that you're doing this. You have real reasons to do this. This isn't something you're not trying to make money. You're not trying to you're not doing it for any other reason other than you've had this experience. It sounds like so in your family life. So it seems like a good reason to get involved, I would think.
Yeah, it's been a major motivation for us for sure, and the ability to help save lives and really change the dynamics within our own communities is really motivating.
Yeah. How we'll touch on this a little more later, but just so folks know if they happen to be tuning in or out, if folks wanted to donate or to take part in the project, how could they get in touch with you to send donations or maybe take part of your some of your events that you do, fundraisers?
Yeah, we have a GoFundMe page
Okay.
into Action Recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And also, they can reach me at my personal email, which is david@foxrunsoberliving.org. They can always reach me. I'm always reachable via email.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Good. And we'll, again, like I said, we'll mention that again later. I just want to make sure folks
Sure.
are tuning in and out. They can kind of catch that stuff. And we'll try to post some links in the comment section below. So, again, if you guys have questions, too, feel free to chime in on Facebook. And I'm actually watching it to see if anybody is asking anything. So, there's a couple people watching so far, so that's always good.
Good.
Tell me a little bit more now about this, Maria, just how you work together now with David and other, I imagine, other groups like what David's doing on the substance abuse issues.
Well, as I do the prevention work, because you can't work in a silo,
Mhm.
you meet so many people. So I actually met David's family first. I've known his family in different aspects for quite a few years, well before the Sober House was on board. And I just recently met David, maybe 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, she came by. And
I
saw it.
came by with one of his family members to
Mhm.
see the Sober House before it opened up, and he was there. I had no idea he was in recovery. I didn't know any of that. So basically, in order for how we work with people, if people wants to work with me, here we are. What can we do?
Oh, okay. It's that easy.
We have, if you're in one of those communities, and even some of the communities that are not officially part of what we do, the addiction doesn't stop at the border.
Right.
So if people are willing to
Unfortunately.
work with us, we do it.
Good.
And knowing that we have a Sober House, because another thing that I do kind of I won't say off the record, but I guess I just did. So off the record is sometimes help people get beds. And we have had a lack of, people come out of detox. They really want to do the right thing. They want to be healthy, and they have no place to go. So it's just wonderful to know that there's some place to send some people.
In your experience, how often does this happen that there's no beds available?
Weekly.
Really?
It could possibly
So
be
this
daily.
is a major problem.
It
Then. This
could be
isn't just a
yes.
minor thing. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And a lot of people will say, and you could probably speak to this a little bit more, but people will say, oh, I'm fine. I went through detox. I'm okay. I'm just going to go home.
Okay.
But recovery, and maybe you talk about that, recovery, it's not just about getting sober. It's so much more. Can you talk a little bit more about that so people can understand?
Yeah, sure. It's about acquiring life skills to live thereafter. There's really a continuum of care that has to be followed. Detox is it's not a recovery plan. Detox is just medically assisted withdrawal. It's the very first element of the recovery. It's the first step. Really what it is a requirement someone needs to go through so they can actually go start getting recovery.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Clearing their head, making them physically okay.
So you have to detox before you can go to a sober house.
Well, I mean, ideally, it would look like this. It would look like the person who's struggling will go to a detox.
Yeah.
Then they'd go to a rehab, which would be maybe like a 28 or 30-day program.
Okay.
And then they would come to us. That's the
okay.
ideal
Gotcha.
situation.
Okay.
They'd go in for a rehab for 30 days. They'd come to us. And what we are really is we're like a transitional place that when they would come to us, there'd be a restrictionary period, and we'd help them, with a few different life skills and almost act as a crutch and help them back onto their feet, back into their home lives, back onto their jobs. They'd start doing all that stuff while they were with us. They'd start going back to work, back around the house, back into society.
Okay. I have a question. So I wanted to just somebody on Facebook said watching her son suffer and have no resources is the hardest thing. So, clearly this is something that's transcendent amongst a lot of people. What do you mean by life skills? So what are these life skills that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, people come in and they don't know how to deal with their emotions, anger and fear and things like that, and we teach them healthy ways to do so.
Oh, okay. Now, is that so? I was thinking in life skills. I was thinking like how to do like a carpentry, build a birdhouse, that kind of stuff. That was a different way of like. Okay, so you're on a more dealing with emotions and things like that. Those type of life skills.
Yeah, we're really a behavior-based program.
Gotcha.
Okay. We teach them how to modify their behaviors. So we really think that's the crux of the problem. That if their behavior starts to change, then their mind will follow. When I was taken through my own journey, I was taught that you can't think your way into right action, but you can act your way into right thinking. So
interesting. Yeah.
With the problem with the addict or the alcoholic is their mind is damaged or broken.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to change that through their behaviors, and that's what we kind of teach them to do.
Okay. Now these are, the mind is a heavy duty. This isn't some light thing that you try, get into lightly. Do you have like a psychologist or a doctor on staff or somebody that helps to work with these guys or some type of counselor?
No, they get some of that in the rehab, and what we do is we kind of put it into practice.
Ah, I see.
So we're a 12-step house.
Okay.
So we follow the big books of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, which are pretty synonymous with one another, and we follow the agenda that's set forth in that, the 12-step.
Okay, so basically it's all been written for you. That's kind of what I was wondering, what sort of mantra, I guess, do you follow in teaching these people how to not go back? What are the I imagine there's no hard numbers, but do you have like kind of a general idea of success rate for people who come through rehab and then the sober house and then end up in the world, back in the normal world?
State data, but I don't have it available.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
but I can tell you from my own experience, personally, with my peers, and then after the fact in the industry, that it's night and day, the success rate for people that go through the continuum of care that I talked about versus those that just go through these spin drives of detox or don't go to treatment at all. You don't see any success with that. And you do see a fair bit of success with folks that really stick it out.
Good. That's excellent.
Yeah.
So I'd like to add one thing about resources in a second, but I want to add to that. I have people who tell me that when they're in recovery and they come out and now they've gone through that first step that David's talking about, the detox and everything, that going back to where they're originally from, even to a loving home, there's something somewhere along the line, whether it be the people they've hung out with or something that they haven't dealt with because they haven't learned to cope. Their only mechanism for coping has been alcohol or drugs, whatever that choice was.
Yep.
And the programs teach people to cope with those things sober and not turning to whether it be the alcohol or the drug. The other thing I want to add, especially from the Facebook, is there are resources. Now, one of the communities we work with is Westford.
Okay.
And Ray Peachy had written for a grant, and he's out of the Westford Board of Health. So this is how close-knit we work together. He wrote a grant, and he was able to get a mental health clinician. I apologize, I'm not sure if that's exactly her title, but she is a mental health clinician, and so any resources, if you have anybody in Tyngsborough that's struggling, the grant was for Westford and Tyngsborough. We have a resource for that individual. So the person that wrote into you, if you need resources, you can reach out to Donna or myself or Ray Peachy, and we'll put the numbers all at the end.
That's fantastic. If Carrie Ann, if you're still watching, because she actually commented again and said it trickles down the line to grandson and having not made the best choices herself affects so many lives. Yep. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, if you're still watching, Carrie Ann, then you can we'll post some information in the comment section, at least some contact info, so that folks at home can write those down or share it with anybody else that they want to.
And that comment is amazing. We just went to and it was thanks to the MOPSI grant. We just went to a conference, and somebody was talking about how the brain develops in a completely different way than I've ever learned about it. And that is so true what she just said, because the first step is what happened when they were in the womb. And now they're starting to find out that even at that point, there could be a piece that's very strong for addiction. So it's interesting how it all ties together. It
I
really
guess
is.
everybody's personality is a little different. Some of us have addictive personalities versus others and stuff. So, boy, it's a tough issue. It's definitely a tough issue, especially given the ease at which people can get these things that they can get addicted to. I mean, whether it's alcohol or some type of drug or other things too. I mean, gambling and other stuff like that as well can be considered substance abuse, I would imagine, as well. But yeah, it's just so easy, unfortunately. Let me ask you this. This is obviously hypothetical, but in a perfect world, would eliminating drugs and alcohol from society solve all the problems? Do you think?
I don't necessarily think so.
Yeah.
I think what we always tell people is that the drugs aren't the problem. They're the bad solution people use for the problem.
Okay, good
You know,
point. Yeah.
People have, whether you want to call it a mental or emotional or spiritual problem, some sort of a malady that's troubling them, and what they're using is a destructive substance, to mask the underlying problems.
I have a very close friend who is in recovery from alcohol, and she had said something, and I said to her, well, how did you deal with that before? She goes, I don't know. I've never dealt with it sober before.
Really?
And it's such a different mindset. I'm told that, say you start drinking at 15, your brain stops at 15 to a certain extent. So when you sober up, you're looking at the problems based on what you've learned to deal with, not what you maybe should have done to deal with. And what you've learned is the alcohol or the drugs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, in all honesty, it wouldn't hurt.
Well, I imagined that. I figured that would be kind of the answer. But I mean, I want to know because there's always going to be something else that people will find. So that's kind of why I asked that question.
Yeah,
like,
it wouldn't eliminate it. It would certainly, in a major way, mitigate what we're seeing. We wouldn't be seeing this widespread, opioid addiction.
Might not be as easy, maybe.
Yeah, but would it entirely wipe out, some of the societal effects that we're seeing? No, not entirely, no.
And you look, when people are incarcerated, they find ways to make alcohol. So I'm sure that they would find ways everybody finds ways if they want to do it.
Where there's a will,
it's
there's a
more
way.
about teaching them why, or what it does to us and what it does to our bodies, that I would think, and again, change, add to that, would help them realize, yeah, it's there, but maybe it's not something I should do.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned something a minute ago, David, about how people would use, religion was involved or other ways maybe that, the question I'm getting at is, are there other things that you guys use? So like helping people, say, find religion or find a hobby or a career or something like that in order to maintain their sobriety. Is that kind of one of the things that you guys work on along with the life skills, or is that something even after the fact, after the sober house they would see?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really have a religious component so much as maybe a spiritual component, you could say.
Okay, right.
That's and there is a difference that can kind of freak people out. So I know what you mean.
And I didn't mean it in the sense like, I'm now Catholic or I'm Jewish or something. I meant spirituality.
I mean, that is certainly part of the teachings of AA and NA.
Okay.
Some connection to a higher power. It doesn't specify any specific religion. What we do really is so much based on trying to look at the behaviors and things such as accountability, rigorous honesty, constant right action, constant thought of others and not yourself. One of the symptoms of this disease is selfishness and dishonesty, and these are the sort of things we try to target. We try to target each individual symptom like that, and we find that to be an effective means to the end we're trying to get. Do
you find that having family support provides for a greater opportunity for people to succeed?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Maria mentioned it a little while ago, and I think we should mention it again. This is really a family disease. We all get sick around it, but some of us get sick in different ways. For example, the parents might be sick with worry and guilt and all kinds of other emotions, not just the addict. So when we can bring those family members on board, educate them, teach them how to interact with their loved one, how not to enable them, signs to look for, how to handle things, and we can bring them on board and make them really supportive, then the success rate can be exponentially higher in that instance.
Okay. Yeah. Well, would you say it's a safe assumption that if this were to be nipped in the bud at a very young age, say 8, 10, 12 years old, that kids understand this, that a lot of these issues that come up later in life, it seems, could basically go away if you were able to actually reach every kid at that young of an age?
I would say that it would definitely going to give them some coping skills. I don't think it would ever go away completely. But yes, I mean, I'll give you an example. Years and years and years ago, everybody smoked. I know when my stepson went through school in 5th grade, I smoked at the time, and the education gave him the ability to say, whoa, this isn't good for us. This isn't good for you. This isn't good for me. I'm
Okay,
not going to
good.
do it.
That's kind of what I was
So,
getting at. Yeah. Okay.
And there's one thing I just want to make clear, 'cause we mentioned life skills a couple of times, and I know that one of our last things is going to be an evidence-based program that Mike from Lowell and I have come across. It's called Life Skills.
Mhm.
It's interesting because we're talking about life skills in so many different ways here.
Yep.
And it happens to be an evidence-based program for the kids. He's talking about life skills just every day. How do we survive every day and cope with things that are based, that I'm not going to go, I'm going to go grab a drink now, or I'm going to go grab a drug now because,
Gotcha.
oh,
Okay.
ooh, that upset me, so that's how I'm going to cope with it.
Mm.
Whereas his life skills are, oh, that upset you, how else can we deal with it so that you're able to deal with it and then grow a little bit?
Mhm.
Does you feel as though that's a safe?
Yeah, that's probably a good way to describe it.
Okay. Interesting. What would you suggest to parents? Ways that they can, or things that they should watch out for, maybe, or ways that they can talk to their kids, seeing as how education of them at such a young age clearly seems to be one of the best ways to kind of mitigate what happens later on in life with everybody. What are some of these things you would tell parents?
I'll have you answer that much more because I think that is, you lived that. So I think that's important. What I would tell parents is not be afraid to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Years and years and years ago when I was a little girl, for example, cancer, they would call it the big C, the C word.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, people were afraid to say that so-and-so had cancer.
Yeah, they didn't want to say it.
They didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
So it was like a denial or some type of stigma that for whatever reason was attached to that.
Yeah, or uttering the words would make it happen again or something.
And that's when I was young. It's like, they're sick, but you don't tell them. Well, it's the stigma towards addiction. It's a disease.
Mm-hmm.
And just to tell the parents to talk with your kids, look to see if your kids have any change in behavior, and not be afraid to mention. Don't be afraid to tell them. Your grandfather had an alcohol problem, so you might be a little bit more apt to have an addiction problem. What do you want to add to that?
I think beforehand that's big. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Also, don't be afraid if you think there's an issue to hide because you think it looks bad or there's some sort of stigma around it.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good point.
So you don't want people to know. I mean, you got to get ahead of these things because by the time you're comfortable enough to say something and it gets to that point, it may be too late.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's when, if you see signs, say something. And then if there is an issue, go educate yourselves. Don't be dependent totally on, a friend or a doctor or this or that. Go out and get education and then act upon it.
Have you noticed that in both of your experience, maybe that people are more free about talking about it now than they were maybe, a decade or more ago? Has that changed, or is it still kind of people still keep it kind of on the taboo? I don't want my friends to know, so I'm going to keep this quiet kind of thing.
It's got better, but it's not where it needs to be.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not as out in the open as other medical issues may be, and that's how it has to be looked at. It has to be looked at as a disease, and but definitely it's got better. Yeah.
Now, how about on the side of in getting back to the kids again and getting in at a young age, obviously watching for signs and symptoms of your kid using might be is of utmost importance, but getting to kids before that even. So like, what are ways you could broach that with kids that are, on the younger end of the spectrum who haven't had any experiences with alcohol or drugs yet? What are the things that you would tell parents to say to your kids at that point? Questions they should ask, things they should bring up, things maybe they shouldn't bring up. Is there anything like that?
That's a tough question. I don't know that I feel qualified to answer that, other than if I would look at, how do they cope with things? Does Johnny throw the ball or hit the wall because you told him to sit down, or whatever the situation is? And then just keep your eyes on them. I don't know how to answer that professionally that I'd feel comfortable.
Okay.
Other than what I just said. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was not knowing what I was getting into when I started out with prescription medication.
Okay.
And that felt safe to me. I was never a kid that really did drugs before that. I thought because it came from a doctor and it became a prescription bottle that it was in some ways safer than.
Okay.
And I think that's the main thing. As far as when they're 8 or 7 or 8 years old, I don't know. Maybe a child psychologist may be more equipped to answer that. But just in terms of early on when the kids are younger, kind of teach them the dangers of things even that may even seem safe.
Okay. So it sounds like, though, in your experience, at least education at a younger age would have helped you maybe before. What I'm getting at is, would it have helped before you had actually interacted with the pill bottle and said, Mommy and Daddy told me this is bad. I shouldn't touch this unless my doctor gives this to me. I guess that kind of a thing. And I throw the age in there because I'm thinking like, given technology and social media and the internet and all that stuff, we're exposed to things, or our kids are exposed to things way earlier than I remember ever being in the 80s. So I feel like you have to go younger almost, you know what I mean, in order to get them before like Google becomes their best friend. You know what I mean?
And we have some parents that say, oh my gosh, you're giving them some type of education in 3rd grade. I don't want my kids talking about drugs in 3rd grade. And I'll say, well, we don't talk about drugs in 3rd grade. We talk about how to deal with stress. I said, the only time we talk about drugs in 3rd or 4th grade is when a 3rd or a 4th grader raises their hand and mentions the drugs that are either happening at home or that they're becoming aware of through their friends. So I'll say to that parent, you might not be talking to your child about drugs or alcohol, but his buddy in the row behind him is.
Right, he could be mentioning.
And if we're in a classroom that they don't mention anything about drugs, we don't mention anything about drugs. It's age appropriate.
Okay.
But you're not going to have a 3rd grader or 4th grader raise their hand. I had somebody raise their hand once and tell me something that was clear their parents were using. So you're not going to ignore that.
Right.
And we find ways to work around that. And the teachers are there too. So they know what to say and what not to say.
So
the younger the better.
Okay. So you'll address the situation should it come up, but you're not going to like,
yes.
cocaine, whatever, crack, all that stuff. You're not going to go through all the drugs and
No.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So what else did you want to talk about with regards to substance abuse? We've gone through about a half hour now, so I didn't know if you wanted to keep going, if you have more to go, or.
I think I'd like to ask maybe David, to me, why I wanted to start with the recovery, because we see so many of the people like your brother, and I will always say I'm sorry for your loss there, that for whatever reason we're not able to get to the other side fully. What would you like to leave, if you had one thing to say to the families who are struggling now, whether it be that they're struggling themselves or whether it's there within the family unit? What would you add or leave with them for as far as what recovery is?
Recovery is individual accountability in terms of the addict. I mean, I used to think when I was young that at a certain age or at a certain point in life that I was just going to get well, and there was going to be this the desire to use drugs and alcohol was going to go away.
Like a phase that would just
end. Yeah. I used to think that, when I get to this age, or when I get to this point in life, or when I get married, I have a kid, whatever it may be, these milestones. And it doesn't happen. It's something you have to go out and get yourself. It's not going to happen for you. And the same thing for the parents. If you put total reliability on, any particular program or person or doctor, I mean, you can't do it. It's rolling the dice. You have to be totally 100% accountable to your own recovery and to the recovery of your family member.
Sounds like nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it for yourself.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. There are resources out there, but you have to fight for them because there's not enough resources out there. So you have to make, calls every day, several times a day for detox beds. You have to, do all your research on what are the best programs and why, and what's the plan afterwards. What does it look like going forward? How is my life going to be different after this? These are all questions you got to ask yourself, and you got to ask for your loved one, and really attack it in that sense.
Do you find that the lack of we know the lack of resources would be a hindrance, but do you find that sometimes people just don't have the motivation one way or the other to try to get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a whole different issue. I mean, when somebody doesn't want to get well, it doesn't matter if you have the best program and all the resources you want. The odds are they're not going to get well. But when you get to the point where somebody wants to get well and doesn't have the resources, that's pretty sad. And that's the void we try to fill.
So that's where you come in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just quickly reset, just so everybody knows. So like I said, we've gone through a half hour. So while I do this, you can think about the next question you want to come up with. But so everybody knows you're watching Tyngsborough TV Live. This is a special segment that we're doing for Substance Abuse Recovery and Awareness Month. And you can watch this broadcast on Facebook and on YouTube, and you can also chime in and ask questions if you'd like. You can also catch us on tyngsboroughma.gov on our video on demand and streaming service, and here in Tyngsborough on Comcast Channel 8 and Verizon Channel 29. My guests are Maria Ruggiero and David Hanley, and they're both related to this overarching issue of substance abuse, and they're talking about the various ways that they have worked in the community to try to mitigate some of the problems, do a lot of education and prevention work, as well as providing beds for folks to go to who are on the road to recovery, we'll say. So it's a very noble cause, I'll give you that much. It's a very difficult cause. I can imagine. Before we get into any other questions, let me ask you both, on a personal level, how do you guys cope with dealing with and seeing all of this just stuff that comes up every day. I can't imagine it's easy to deal with all the time.
For me, when I meet people like David,
Mm-hmm.
I say, wow, this is awesome.
Mhm.
When I started doing this, I used to do emergency preparedness. And
Right, I
before
remember,
I
yeah.
did prevention, that's how we met.
Yeah.
I forget about that's how we met.
Yeah.
And when I was at another organization, we did the harm reduction or just opiate awareness, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the very first time someone came to me and said, you're going to do opiate awareness. And I said, wait a second, I'm not going to tell people not to do drugs. Now, keep in mind, this was almost 11 years ago. So I had that old language as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell people not to do drugs. I'm going to tell people how not to overdose. And the person said to me, yes, because people can change. There is recovery.
Mhm.
There is hope, but they have to be alive to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a good point. Yeah, you have
it
to
was
be
like
alive
just
to do it.
and
Yeah.
it immediately opened my mind to say, wow, I didn't see that.
Right.
I didn't see that.
So, but what do you do? Like after a long day, you've been dealing with cases and seeing what can happen. What do you do? How do you unwind it? I guess. How do you let it go so it doesn't affect you at home?
Well, I have my own coping skills. I do
Mhm.
yoga.
Oh, good.
I
Okay.
meditate. And seriously, meeting people like David makes me say, oh my goodness, there is hope out there. When I'm dealing with families that, they're in the struggle, you just have to give them as much of your heart as you can
Mhm.
right then.
Mhm.
And then I don't want to say forget about it because I never do. I will think, geez, I wonder how so-and-so is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But you just know that you're part of a bigger machine, and you have one little piece. So I try not to take the whole piece home with me.
Mm-hmm.
I just try to think about where I fit within that.
Mm.
And I know I've said it twice already, meeting people like David really make me just wonderful. It just makes me feel so wonderful. And a lot of the families that we both know that have lost people in their lives have turned this tragedy in their own family into something positive to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And that keeps me going as well.
Excellent. Good. How about you, David?
Yeah, I mean, I can just piggyback off that and saying that early on for me, I sort of felt responsibility to kind of help because this was given to me,
Mhm.
and I was able to save my own life through the help of others.
Mhm.
And I felt this responsibility. I was compelled to give back in that sense. And, as I mentioned before, my brother passed away in December of 2016. That kind of made me look at it a whole different way. I looked at it like I don't want the families of these guys who I deal with to have to go through the same thing my family had.
Mm-hmm.
So that was enough motivation for me
Mhm.
in that sense
Mhm.
then, and it still is now. It's we do a lot of work with the families of the guests.
Mhm.
Family meetings and talking to the parents and wives and girlfriends and stuff like that. And I see the same pain that I used to see in my mom's face.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to make the end result a lot happier.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that's your coping mechanism, or do you have other ways, like, do you get into sports or, yoga and
Oh, I mean,
things like that?
personally, I went a different direction, but yeah.
No, it's okay. That's fine.
Personally, yeah, I play golf. I play a lot of golf.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So that's I kind of picked that up in recovery early on, and I had a lot of friends that I have a new group of friends now. I had a group I hung out with a lot during the days when I was running. Then since I've got well, I have a new group of friends that have similar success that I've had, and I got into golf. I got really into golf, and that's what I do. That's all I do besides this kind of work, to be honest with you.
Excellent. Oh, excellent. I'm always curious because you want to know, like, what is it that you can use to relax? I mean, obviously, you're not going to go home and sip on a cognac or something like that. You're not going to touch alcohol. You're probably not going to want to go near that stuff. So I'm always curious to know what people like to do in order to just kind of like mellow out, relax, get their head straight. You need, because you need that, especially given the stuff you guys are doing, a social service. So it's it's a heavy duty job, I would think, mentally anyways. But
Can I add one thing?
you go
So
for
the
it. Sure.
people who know me really well know that another thing that I do to relax is I love pets, and I have a dog
Okay,
and a
there
cat.
you go. Yep.
And doing the prevention work, you do see at the moment, like when you're in and you're doing education with the kids, and they get it.
Mm-hmm.
Just the look on that fourth grader's face when they get it. And it might be something as simple as, no, I'm not going to throw the chair because I'm upset. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to tell you why I'm upset. Whatever it happens to be, something simple.
Okay.
That look on their little face is priceless. But that's so different. There's so much that happens between that fourth grader and then all the way up to when we find them having the
Right,
issue.
I imagine,
So,
yeah. Let me ask you this, David. So you mentioned about sort of running with a certain group of friends when you were using at the time. do you find that in your experience that getting rid of that group of friends is generally one of the things they have to do? Like, you probably can't go run with those same people because they're going to be doing the stuff that you're trying to get out of, I would imagine.
Well, I think it's tough to talk in generalities, but specifically guys that I used to hang with or girls that I used to hang with that still continue to use drugs. I don't hang with those same.
You just write them
group.
Off, basically.
Yeah, but that's not to say that folks that live normal, regular lives that have a drink at a bar once in a while or go out, I don't avoid them.
Okay.
So it's not that I have to run from what I'd say is sort of the normal stuff. It says in the book of AA that once you get well, you can go anywhere. A free man can go, so long as you have a reason to be there.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't necessarily hang around, but I can certainly go to a wedding where there's alcohol served or any other social event.
So you can be free to be comfortable anywhere, basically, as long as you're comfortable in yourself, knowing that you're not going to go
right, exactly,
jump behind the bar and start mixing cocktails, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. As long as you're doing all the right things, you have a freedom and a level of comfort that just like anyone else would have.
Excellent. I think that's important for people to understand that are trying to rationalize this in their own minds, whether they have a family member that's involved or them themselves. That you can live normally after the fact. You don't have to be cooped up in a box, locked away from everything. You can be normal. You can still go to a wedding and have a good time, and
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I go to weddings and events, and my wife will have a wine, and it doesn't, she doesn't have to hide it from me, or I don't have to sit on the other side of the table or anything like that.
Some of our success stories, these people are living wonderful, absolutely happy lives. In the moment of the throes of addiction, when they're at that point where they're trying to decide what type of help they're going to get, their brain is telling them, you don't want help. This drug or this alcohol is everything. But once they get past that point, people have told me just how happy they are. We have one of our success stories in one of my communities. She just had a baby. And, I always say, oh, my gosh, it's one of our coalition babies. She's so happy and such a great mother. You would never have even considered that 2 years or 3 years ago, however long I've known her. And I think the thing that I want to go away with, the recovery happens. Please don't lose hope. Please don't look at people that don't need help, because they are. And you can always reach out to me, to anybody. If I can't find a resource right then and there, I will look and get back to you.
Excellent.
So
well, let's do this for the last few minutes. Tell me about some of the success stories that you both have experienced in your time doing this work. Some of the things that have made you that aha moment, that wow, we did a great job. We made this, we helped this person through this time, and now they're perfectly normal and functioning like anybody else would.
I'll take that. In that, I didn't realize there was the ability to have this kind of success. I had a friend of mine, a close friend of mine I grew up with, that he actually went out and got it and got well. And he wasn't on, methadone, or he wasn't, stipulated by court to be. He was just on his own. He was doing well. And this was a kid that used to use heroin. And it was kind of shocking to me, because I didn't really know a lot of folks like that. And then eventually, when I was ready, I went to him and I said, what did you do? And he showed me what he did, and I went into treatment myself. And since then, I've seen a lot of guys and girls get well, have families, have successful careers, help other people from all walks of life. Scores of guys. I'm not exaggerating here. I used to go into treatment years ago, into, less qualified treatment, let's say. And I'd see more guys pass away than get well.
Wow.
That's the truth.
Wow.
And then in this recent stint, in this sort of 12-step path I'm going on now, I've seen such an improvement in what's out there for treatment, and I've seen such an improvement in the results. It's incredible.
Really?
I have family members, friends that have all got well, and it's really inspiring. And especially when I see one of these younger guys, because sometimes it takes somebody a lot of years to lick something, but I see some of these younger guys in their early 20s, when they have no, they don't have a mortgage, they don't have a family, they don't have any pressing need to force them to get well, because some people need to be forced to get well. And everyone gets well on their own timetable, but whatever. It's really inspiring when I see one of these guys, 20-year-old kid or something like that has a real problem, that's a real addict, and able to beat it and get well, and it's inspiring to see that.
Fascinating. Let me ask you this quickly. Do you think that what's improved the success rate for folks is awareness? Is it funding? Is it just kind of all of them working together? Do you think any one thing really has made a difference, or is it just kind of, like I say, a grouping of things working together?
I don't know if it's any one thing. It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's there are more programs out there now. There's still not enough, but there's more than there were, say, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The quality of the programs has gotten better. There's still some real bad ones out there, don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some quality programs out there. And, there's more awareness, there's more education, there's more help groups like, Learn to Cope, in groups like that for family members to learn what to do with their loved one.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you take that education piece and put it with, a real structured program, anytime that meets somebody that's motivated to get well, they can get well. Where in the past it was, you could have all the motivation in the world, you couldn't find a bed, you couldn't find a decent program.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's a little bit different now.
Okay. How about you, Maria? What's some of the things that you've experienced?
I
The
think
good
we
stories.
we really have to approach it in all aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so weaved into our lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
it has to be prevention. We have to try to get the little kids to make better choices when they have issues.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have people help people who are maybe experimenting, give them the knowledge to understand how dangerous that experimentation could be.
Mm-hmm.
We have parents that say, well, geez, I smoked marijuana when I was a young kid, and look at me. Well, okay, there's a couple things wrong with that. A, you have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You could. B, the marijuana is much stronger now. People don't look at things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have to give those kids and those people that education to hopefully have them make the right decision. That if I'm going to drink, well, I'm going to wait till I'm 21 or 22. And we have to help the people who have already gone down the path where they're struggling. And there are different levels of struggling, but there are different resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you just need to match that person who's ready for the help with somebody who cares. And I'm not saying that people don't care, so let me say that a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
With somebody that has the resources and the understanding of what they're going through. I could care an awful lot, but I don't understand that you just cannot pick up that drug and I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be educated as the person that's in the family.
Mm-hmm.
It's no one answer. We just have to continue looking at what we have, looking at the problem and what's causing the problem,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to adapt enough to fix it, while providing the younger kids the prevention education that hopefully they don't get themselves in that situation.
Right, yeah. Now, how about success stories? Have you experienced any of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, because it's not at all even slightly primary what I do for a living,
Mm-hmm.
but because I'm a civilian in a police station, I do see some. We have one particular person. She literally just had a baby. I'm going to say maybe the baby's 8 months ago, and
Oh, wow.
she's doing absolutely fabulous.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
I can think of a dozen off the top of my head that my colleague who actually makes the calls is very excited about. It does work, but it's not my primary responsibility, so he would be able to tell you more. But yeah, I mean, you have people, I'll be talking to somebody, and I'll be explaining the programs to them, so I'm thinking I have to really, explain and they'll lean over and they go, I'm in recovery 10 years, I don't need to. I get you. I understand it.
Oh,
And I
okay.
say, wow, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that. And it does work. And if you look at some of the recovery programs, there's hundreds of people, thousands, right?
Yeah, a lot of people getting.
Thousands.
There are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Fabulous. All right. Well, so that's good. I mean, that means that what you're doing is making a difference. I mean, clearly,
hope.
hopefully, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you'd like to think that obviously it's kind of hard because you're never going to have hard numbers on whether or not they paid attention or didn't in the classes, I would imagine.
Mhm.
But you do what you do,
Mhm.
and you just hope and pray that does the trick.
And I would think, and I could be wrong, but I would think when the guy that you're dealing with at your house is having an issue and he's saying, God, okay, the only way I know how to deal with this is to whatever, when you're able to help that person through the fact and they're able to say, well, I don't need that drink or I don't need that drug,
Mm-hmm.
I would think that's satisfying.
Yeah, there's nothing better than seeing a guy get it and seeing a guy that comes in totally dependent on a substance,
Mm-hmm.
whose life is a mess,
Mm-hmm.
that is irresponsible, that's in financial trouble, that's in marital trouble, whatever it may be. Walk out of there a new man 6 months down the road,
Really?
putting himself together financially with his family and physically looking a lot better, sounding better, making more sense. That's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah. What is the sort of time span that folks generally stay in we'll talk about the successful ones, but how long are they usually in these programs from start to finish before they get back to life, let's say?
So detox is anywhere from 4 to 16 days, generally about a week.
Mm-hmm.
The rehab programs are around 28 or 30 days on average.
Okay.
And then our component, which is the sober living residential component,
Mhm.
it varies guy to guy, or girl to girl, but it's we generally suggest about 6 months.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And which it seems like a long time to hear, but when you look in the grand scheme of things, when somebody's been using drugs and trying and failing for 10, 15 years, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
if they go in and get it right once, it's well worth it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're trying to untrain bad habits too, so that does make sense. I mean, the time frame does make sense. I'm thinking about it in terms of like if somebody goes to boot camp, they're trying to untrain all of the things that they don't want them to know and train them the things they do want them to know, and that takes months.
Well, folks don't understand sometimes that you can't use drugs for 10 years and then get better in a week and a half.
Yeah. Right.
It's like one of those things.
It's
You
not
walk
that
a mile
fast.
into the woods, you got to walk a mile to get out.
Mhm.
You need to put some time in.
Mm-hmm.
And really take yourself out of the game for a little while. Put yourself on the bench and just work on yourself and not try to keep all those balls in the air, work and family and whatever it may be. You kind of got to take a time out, work on yourself, get to where you need to be, then you can transition back into those things.
Mm-hmm. Are there any major stumbling points, aside from people getting back on drugs? What are some of the major stumbling points that people in recovery might hit?
Behaviors.
Yeah.
It's getting into sick relationships too early. It's difficult. It's a difficult task because now you have with social media, and Tinder and Facebook and all this other stuff where they start early on and they prioritize things ahead of their recovery.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that be a relationship that I was talking about,
Mhm.
or whether that be going back to work too early,
Mm-hmm.
or trying to take on too much at home, anytime you prioritize something ahead of your recovery, what I was always taught is that you lose that thing anyways. So if your recovery's not in the number one spot, you're not going to hang on to everything else, which seems kind of counterintuitive if you think about it. Let's say you have kids at home, or you have an important job, or whatever it may be, your responsibilities. You say these things have to be the priorities, even
Mhm.
your kids,
Mhm.
right? That might sound counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't keep your recovery up front, you're not going to be any kind of a dad or a mom to your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah,
That's really the way you have to look at it. It's a different way of living. It's a new design for living that you have to follow.
And I would think too, I've had people tell me when they're in recovery that when they were using that the drug or the alcohol, whatever the substances came first. So something could have always come before those kids, but it was harmful. Whereas now, just saying your recovery comes before your kids doesn't mean you're going to ignore your kids. It just means you're going to take care of yourself, right? You're going to take better care of yourself.
It's almost like on the plane when they say if the oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first, then try to take care of other people.
Person, yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to be that dad or that employee or that whatever it may be in society that you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to do that if you're not well. That's as simple as it
that
is.
makes sense. I mean, you have to get yourself right before you can, like you said, before you can focus on anything else. You need to get your own head straight before you can do any of those things. Because I mean, these are deep rooted. We've talked about this already a few minutes ago, but these are deep rooted things. These addictions, and it's not just a 1 or 2 or 5 to 10 day thing. It's a months probably, and clearly with people that are I'm 10 years sober, I'm 20 years sober. They're dealing with it for their whole lives. So it kind of makes sense. But I mean, I imagine that at some point they can start to focus on the other things as well.
Yeah, it's like I compare it to like going to the gym. Early on, it's a lot of work,
Mhm.
and then it becomes maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first few months, 3, 4, 6 months, whatever it may be, there's going to be a lot asked of these people. They're going to have to write inventory. They're going to have to do a lot of reading, one-on-one work, going to meetings, a whole slew of things.
Mm-hmm.
But as time goes by, what's asked of them is much less, and what they have to do and how it affects their day is much less, and it just becomes maintenance. As long as they hit a couple of checkpoints throughout the rest of their lives, they're going to be fine. Almost like a diabetic with insulin. As long as they take their shot every day, they're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to put that down for 6 weeks, they might be in trouble.
Excellent. Good points. Very good points. Any final thoughts? Parting things
I
you
just
want to tell
want to
folks
thank
about?
you so much for coming on with us, and I want to thank Tyngsborough. I want to thank you, Steve.
You're
You
welcome.
and I have a
course.
history, but to know that we're going to be doing these shows with you is wonderful. I want to thank Donna, who is very nicely in the background there.
She's
who
hiding back
hopefully
there.
will get on.
Can't say otherwise, but she's right back.
Because really and truly, she's been a champion. And I want to thank the town manager. I want to thank everybody in Tyngsborough and Kate Trainer at the high school. I want to thank everybody because we're all working together to try to come to some solution And Tyngsborough's really jumped on board, so I really appreciate it. Thank
Excellent. Well, we're happy to help. I think I can speak for Donna and say that we're all happy to help and do what we can, because it's an important issue. And clearly this is, and it's not going away, sadly. It's one of these things that's going to be with us until society ends, which hopefully that doesn't happen, asteroid or whatever. But it is an important issue, and I think it's something that I wish more people understood better. I think what you're doing is very commendable in that you're trying to get in and get early and get to these kids and help teach them so that they don't end up on these roads. But when they do, there's people like you, David, that are there to help them pick up the pieces and bring them back to reality, let's say. So I think on both sides, the job you guys do is very commendable. You deserve a pat on the back and an award or something. I don't know. I think that's it's a heck of a job that you guys are doing. I really do. I give you all the credit.
I don't know about an award, but thank you very much.
Yeah, we don't want an award. You know what I want? You know what everybody can give me?
What's that?
If there's a family or someone that's out there struggling, call confidentially.
There you go.
And we will find you a way, some help.
Excellent. And that is the way I think we should end it. What are the contact informations that you would have folks reach out to?
So it would be myself, Maria Ruggiero. My phone number is 978-851-7373, and my extension is 352. Are you going to be able to put my email address up?
Yeah, we're going to put it in the...
We'll put that up because it's my name is hard to spell. You can always call the Tewksbury Police Department and just ask for, tell them what you're calling for if you can't remember my extension, or ask for me, and they'll put you into me.
Excellent. And David?
Yeah, with me, it's David at foxrunsoberliving.org. You can reach me with the email, or my phone number is 978-804-7844. More than happy to field your calls and help in any way I can. And if it's a family member or if it's an addict themselves, I can help you get into treatment and certainly line something up for you at our place. Happy to have you.
Excellent. Well, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, for the counselor that is for Westford and Tyngsborough, I don't have Ray Peachy's number, but it'll be Ray Peachy. But if they reach out to me, I'll put them in contact with the correct person.
So before you guys go, just let me get that info down so I can put it in the comment section. Excellent. So folks can get access to that.
Wonderful.
So again, folks, thank you all for watching. That was we were having a conversation with Maria Ruggiero. She's the Substance Abuse Program Director for SAPSI out of the town of Tewksbury, but you do cover a multitude of towns. And David Hanley, you're the Program Director for the Fox Run Sober Living. So again, I'm going to put all the contact information in the comment section so you guys can grab that if you'd like to. And stay tuned for more of this series. We'll have a couple more episodes, I think 3, right?
3 more after this, yeah.
On other subjects about substance abuse. The next one I think is opiates. Is that what we're doing?
Well, we're talking about myths and other drugs.
Oh, right. Okay. Yep. I remember now. Yep. Okay. And then we'll round it out with the final recovery episode. So there'll be a few more of those, so stay tuned for that.
And then the third week is going to be, we're going to have somebody come in and talk about suicide.
Okay.
Because that's one of the things that people will often use drugs for.
Makes sense, yeah. It's a subject that I understand well myself, so it's a sad truth, unfortunately. But yeah, that said, folks, again, I hope you guys will tune in for future episodes. You can always watch these on Facebook and YouTube, so they'll live there forever. You can also catch them on our video on demand and streaming service at tyngsboroughma.gov, or you can watch them on Comcast Channel 8 and Verizon Channel 29 here in the town of Tyngsborough. Any questions for me, sbrogan at tyngsboroughma.gov, or you can send them in via Facebook and YouTube if you want as well. So either way, whichever way you want to ask questions. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and all those wonderful things with your vast social media networks. We really appreciate it because it helps to get these very important messages out to the community. And all that said, folks, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye.